Hi, I'm Anna Soper. Welcome to Teen People, the podcast where I track down people from Teen People magazine. Where are they now? This week's guest, Tabitha Sukhai, gives us an update. Tabitha is an award-winning digital media professional and social media strategist. She got her start as a Teen People Trendspotter, part of a network of thousands of Teen People readers who contributed original content to the magazine, participated in focus groups, and advised Teen People's staff on local trends in their own communities. As a New York-based Trendspotter, Tabitha had a close involvement with the magazine and its staff. This gave her valuable editorial and marketing experience in a major media corporation. In 2001, she jumped into an internship, or rather a series of internships, across the Time Inc. spectrum, but she began by working with Isabel González, Teen People's Special Projects Editor and head of the magazine's Trendspotter program. Today, Tabitha uses her skills to uplift small businesses and mentor up-and-coming digital media professionals. Tabitha spoke with me in the fall of 2021 from her home in New York.
At the time, it was, wow, yeah, you're triggering this memory now. Isabel had an office in the Time and Life building, and she had set it up so that she was sitting with her computer in that office, and then on a table in the same office, she set up a computer for me. And so we were working in the same office, which, you think back now to, the job market being completely flooded now after COVID and things like that. Those opportunities don't exist, right? Well, Time Inc. doesn't exist anymore. That like the entire company has folded, like merged with Meredith and folded. But so much has changed, and so now to think back, yeah, there are probably kids who would have loved to have an opportunity like that, to work so closely with an editorial professional in the Time and Life building, sitting literally like a foot away from them. The real life sort of Trendspotter column quickly sort of became a little bit of a yearbook that was reflective of just me and all my best friends, right? Because we would have openings in spots of the magazine that, we couldn't fill, and we needed just a quick, person to give us a quote for the front of the book or whatever. And now I love flipping through those and just seeing like my best friend from from ninth grade, my best friend from, that was a little perk, was just creating this sort of memory book, right? That was also something you could buy on newsstands, right? So that was cool. And so it is a bit of a time capsule for me in particular. I do see how the Trendspotter program and how that user-generated content lived on the page laid the groundwork for the work I would go on to do in social media marketing, and where basically we took that experience and lifted it to pixels, essentially, right?
When you connected with me on Instagram, you said that you had been in the March 2002 issue of Teen People, which has a really beautiful photograph of Britney Spears on the cover, and beautiful pictures of her inside as well. And I don't have that issue in my possession, but I did look it up in a database of periodicals through my public library. So I saw that you were in a thing about how to DIY a sweater into a skirt.
Yeah.
And I think they had you modeling the finished product. Can you tell me a bit about that?
That was fun. It was such, like I said, a different time. That shoot was a proper photo shoot, right? Like we went to a place and there was a photographer and there were turkey wraps and, somebody doing makeup. Now the lady who did my makeup for that shoot, I see her on QVC selling her own line of products. And it was such a different time, right? Now, everyone can do a full face of makeup and, a photo shoot is something, most young people do in an afternoon on a Sunday afternoon, it's like, hey, let's go to Dumbo. We'll do a photo shoot. It's like nothing. So things have changed so much. And that shoot was probably one of a handful of experiences I had with, like I said, what a good J-Lo style photo shoot probably goes like. That tied into an interest I had in DIY, right? And so, it was great and would speak to, sustainable thinking now, right? I think it's probably Levi's who just launched that polarizing sort of like Jaden Smith, I think, is in it, ad campaign around, buy well-made things so you buy less and you waste, answering to kind of like the popularity of disposable clothing that, cheap disposable clothing that kind of, saw its heyday in recent years. So, at the time, it was just a fun way to turn a sweater into a mini skirt. But, a lot of, I think that, the underlying things there, other than it being a cool, fun thing to do and a fun thing to say, oh, you like this skirt? Well, guess what? It was my dad's sweater. Or whatever, those themes I think are timeless. Just certainly now in terms of eco-conscious and eco-friendly thinking and all of that.
I read on your Instagram that your mom actually brought you to your interview for your Teen People internship.
Yeah. Up until that point, this interview kicked in. I'm going to say it was around senior year of high school, right? So like I said, it was this program meant to give students of color exposure to corporate environments and, jobs they wouldn't otherwise have, or environments they wouldn't otherwise be exposed to, right? Certainly my career path doesn't look like any of my cousins or siblings' career path, for sure. I do remember that internship possibility, that opportunity sort of presenting itself. I had never taken the train up until that point, right? Like my parents, like I said, like they're your pretty textbook protective Indian parents. And so my mom drove us to school, and we had never had a need to take the subway before. But my mom definitely got on the train with me and took me to the Time and Life building, which as a kid who read 17, read YM, read Teen People, to step into that building, which, of course, like would be the building that The Devil Wears Prada was filmed in later, right? Like this legendary situation. Like I was obviously fangirling hard, even if my mom was like, what is this place? Who cares? So in the way that a protective parent accompanies you anywhere, my mom did bring me to that internship interview, which, if you fast forward about, I guess, 15 years or so, I ended up getting a Top Women in Media award, where I thanked my mom and said, it was my mom who brought me to my internship interview X amount of years ago, and, got me kickstarted on this career that I love, and that I've been able to kind of pivot with the times as far as how content was being distributed, go from working in print to working in web to working in social and things like that. That was my mom's supervised train ride to Midtown Manhattan that kickstarted that whole thing, right? I do remember fondly working at Teen People and it being, someplace where you saw women of color leading in, as editor in chief. And you saw a lot of diversity in terms of them bringing in interns and just it was such an inclusive work environment that I have not succeeded at replicating in my 25-year career following that. And yeah, it definitely got less and less diverse as my career went on, right? And the higher up you get, then of course, the sort of less diversity you're seeing as well. So in that way, I think they were ahead of their time in that respect as well, right? And it spoiled me a little bit, right? Because then I expected to see that always, right? Moving forward in my career. And so I think that's all part of the magic that you talk to people and they're so nostalgic for their experience there and working there. I think that's all part of the, secret sauce that really makes that experience so memorable, right? They were doing so much so well so long ago. And maybe that's part of the reason it didn't sort of maybe they were ahead of their time a little bit, and so maybe there's something to that, but certainly I do think that everyone who did work there does believe in diversity, does believe in inclusive, an inclusive planet, right? where there's equity and things like that. And I don't think it's an accident that Teen People did attract a lot of the same kind of really very open-hearted, very maybe idealistic, but also just very, sort of innovative thinkers and things like that in that sense.
Why do you think diversity was such a key part of that workplace culture?
I think that particularly my generation, right? They call us, I guess, the elder millennials or whatever. But certainly, I think with millennials, you started to see sort of more ethnic diversity certainly than ever before, right? And now in my kids' generation, Sam's, I guess they call them Gen Xers.
Gen Z, Gen Z?
Gen Zers, sorry. Yeah, Gen Zers, Gen Xers are very different. Right, they're just, kind of further expanding just what encompasses inclusivity further, right? When it comes to sexual identity and all of that, in a way that certainly my generation just, we weren't there yet, for sure. I don't know that I've worked at another title that has successfully done that in the way that Teen People did. And I do think that comes from, when I think back to my upbringing in Brooklyn with, elementary school, junior high school is always just this melting pot of people. And certainly it was very organic. Where now I think there's a lot being done in terms of discourse to formalize things. And certainly there's a much larger vocabulary around certain injustices and things like that. Maybe it's me just remembering, back in my day type stuff where everything just seems simpler, perhaps. But certainly I do think that Teen People was representative sort of a level of inclusivity that that maybe, the industry struggled with and sort of led to things going the way they went.
Yeah, I think you see that in the pages of these Teen People magazines from back in the day. And so it's interesting to hear that not only was there diversity reflected in the magazine content, but then there was also a diverse workforce creating that content and facilitating that content creation.
And for some reason that became something that was harder to achieve. And I don't know what to peg that to, but it did seem that the pipeline, one way or another, did kind of change, right, over time. I was an intern at Teen People for my entire career there, just had jumped from department to department, and then, finished college because that was important once. And then moved on to other titles right in the Time Inc. building. But even to take an internship that pays very little or doesn't pay at all is sort of something not a whole lot of of kids can even afford to do in high school, in college. Like you are eating ramen and can't afford Starbucks, and you can't take that job that is going to give you this sort of invaluable experience. Yeah, I think back to the internship that I got then. It was through a program, sort of an affinity group program, a diversity geared program that did allow me to do that and also get paid for it. Those opportunities are less and less now. And so there's a little bit of perhaps, inequity there in terms of who can afford to take that free internship and who can't. A lot of the conversation around corporate hiring following 2020 was basically, I'd love to hire that unicorn, that, rock star who's, also a person of color. But yeah, they don't exist. And the conversation often became, well, just because you don't know them doesn't mean they don't exist. Like, I promise you, we're out here. It's just that perhaps your network needs expanding, right? And so, yeah, maybe you do have to then activate and speak to people that normally you wouldn't on a weekend or whatever. And I think that people underestimate just how difficult that is for people at all levels, in business, in corporate, and not. Particularly when they're, people are coming under so much scrutiny for a tweet they sent 14 years ago or whatever, right? It is going to make people a little hesitant, maybe, to have conversations that, are difficult conversations. To go to a white executive and say, hey, you're doing a thing wrong, that's emotional labor for me. That goes against everything I've ever been taught as an Indian kid, right? I still have a hard time, telling my dad the air conditioning is too high. So, it's a lot of sort of straddling a lot of identities and things like that. And, taking, that bird's eye view of just my whole career. Like I said, for my most inclusive professional experience to have been a teen magazine a bajillion years ago is so sad. So sad.
Why did you become part of the Trendspotters program?
I was very much a sort of magazine lover at that age as well, right? And that to me seemed like a way to kind of get in the door, and certainly, to meet people, turn that focus group about lip smackers into, a conversation with their internship coordinator. And so, I just thought that the access it provided certainly would be useful, if not fun, right? For someone who loved the medium and maybe wanted to work in that space, right? And so I was always kind of planning for the future, I guess you could say. The Trendspotters program did, in its own way, create that platform, right, that now, maybe teen YouTubers with 1 million followers have, right? It was a very early version of that, and certainly, was different, but I can see how that kind of program would lay the groundwork for a lot of, let's play streamers, or building that sort of niche community, right, around a very specific thing and finding your audience that way. The way we created the content was very different, but I could see how that was a small step in sort of the direction of kind of what we're seeing today.
I like that you went into that with a goal that you wanted to get an internship.
Definitely. I mean, I think that I'm probably the first person in my family. I mean, my parents are immigrants from South America, and immigrants just have a very practical way of thinking about things, you're going to work because you need to make money, and doctors and lawyers get paid a lot, so maybe do that. And I think that I was definitely sort of, I mean, if you ask a lot of my relatives today what it is I do for a living, I don't think they could really answer you, because it's so sort of foreign to anything remotely traditionally practical. Right? I think that most people are consumers and never think they can cross that bridge over to becoming the content creator that's sort of delivering that message, right? It was sort of something early on that I identified where I was just kind of like, wow, I like this thing so much. What if I could help make this thing? Yeah, I don't know what made me think or have the audacity to think that I could be somebody who was creating a message for other kids like me. I guess I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I've now been in sort of the industry in one form or fashion. Maybe 18 to 20 years now. So.
You've mentioned your parents a few times in our chat, and you've mentioned your son as well. So it sounds as if you have a close unit of people around you. And I was curious to know, what advice, looking back now, what advice would you give your teenage self today?
Wow. What would I tell that person? It's really interesting because I don't have anything particularly positive or to really say, and I'll try to explain that as sort of succinctly as I can, but I think I was way more confident and hopeful back then. I think things got just more challenging in terms of, like I said, feeling represented in certain spaces and feeling like I had a voice in those places and not feeling like I had to edit myself and things like that. I do think that things definitely, especially coming out of 2020, got a bit heavier and like we talked about, trickier to navigate and things like that. I think what I would say would be just around the velocity of change that would occur in coming years, right? Back when I started at Time Inc., there was no reality, I think, that any Teen People staffer or any magazine staffer in that building would have said, "Oh, this building this brand will cease to exist," right? In as little as 10 years or 15 years, right? I think that the people working and Time Magazine still exists, to be fair. People Magazine still exists, to be fair. They're all, I guess, owned by different sort of entities. I just think what I would say, I would encourage that teenager to not lock on to any specific thing and just have a very agile growth mentality about things, right? Just that mindset shift of creating content that stops at the printing press. At the time, magazines were the glamorous preferred way of delivering content. Back then, you look at Time and Life building and it was like, for some people, for magazine lovers, for journalists, it was like going to church, right? It was this building that had such a footprint in Midtown and had such a stature about it that you would never imagine, I didn't see myself packing up my boxes, leaving, what was now a Meredith building and Time Inc. ceasing to exist, right? So I think looking back, I would sort of encourage that young person to brace for impact a bit better, right? I was able to pivot and like I said, kind of know where to go in terms of doing what I did, but doing it for the preferred medium of the moment, right? Or for the preferred platform of the moment. And so I've been lucky in that way, and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, like we've said, just that rapid change, right, that we've seen happen over the last few years, and certainly over the last couple of years. Yeah, I don't think any of us were like prepared for that. So if I were to Back to the Future to myself, I would definitely just like give a heads up about just how, it's unprecedented. I mean, as much as people were saying that godforsaken word when the pandemic hit, right? Just the level of flexibility and agility you had to have to kind of bend and not break, right? In how fast a lot of these changes were happening, right? Heads up on that, I think, is what I would give her.
As well as her work in the social media space, Tabitha is also a writer. Her articles have appeared on thisoldhouse.com, The Huffington Post, Real Simple, and BuzzFeed. Find Tabitha's work online through the link in this week's show notes. And you can connect with me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at teenpeoplepod. Also on Tumblr, teenpeoplepod.tumblr.com. If you liked this episode, please post a review or rating on your favorite podcast app. I'll be back next week with more untold stories from the pages of Teen People magazine. Until then, I'm Anna Soper. Stay well.